Welcome to the first day of the Disability and Work in Canada 2021 conference. My name is Dr. Mahadeo Sukai. I serve as the Director of Research and Chief Inclusion and Accessibility Officer for the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, or the CNIB. And in this role, I have the privilege of overseeing a nationwide team of highly qualified researchers and accessibility professionals, including students, postdocs, and academic collaborators, many of whom, myself included, have lived experience with disabilities. It's an honor and a pleasure to serve as your MC for the first day of the conference this year. The Disability and Work in Canada, or DWC initiative, is a collaborative of multiple organizations. The four founding organizations included the Centre for Research on Work Disability Policy, or CRWDP, the Ontario Network of Injured Workers Group, or ONIWG, the Canadian Council on Rehabilitation and Work, or CCRW, and the former member, Inclusion Newfoundland, or Inclusion NL. Over the past couple of years, the DWC Steering Committee has been actively working on formalizing the initiative's governance structure and seeking to expand representation of disability community members participating in it. A parallel session being held on this first day will provide an opportunity for delegates to hear about and discuss the DWC governance developments. This session is at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time today, and it will also be discussed on day 4 at 2:50 p.m. Eastern time. There are 4 new members of the steering committee who join this year. Each of us is serving as MC for one day of the conference. And so the day 1 MC, myself, is a new member of the steering committee. The day 2 MC, Dorami Ailing from the Rick Hansen Foundation. The day 3 MC, Krista Carr from Inclusion Canada, and the day 4 MC, Tammy Yates from Realize. As you know, the conference is being held over 4 days, December 1, 2, 6, and 7, today, tomorrow, and next week, Monday and Tuesday, from 12:15 Eastern to 3:30 Eastern time. Each day will start with inspiring and informative keynotes. The theme for this year's conference is achieving equality of work and equality of opportunity and choice in careers, jobs, and work. We have 2 sets of parallel sessions on the first 3 days and 1 set of parallel sessions on the 4th day. There are also exhibitor booths, poster presentations, and vignettes. Reflection sessions and closing keynotes will take place on the last day. The theme for today is fully including people with disabilities in the COVID recovery. A few housekeeping items for you. Accessibility features include ASL and CART for all sessions, French language interpretation, so French English and English French for all plenaries, and 1 of each set of parallel sessions. Overviews, and so I'm going to go through some overviews of ways that that we are making the conference more accessible for you. So the video of an ASL interpreter will be on your screen, as your video layout in Zoom will already display the ASL interpreter in side-by-side mode. You can adjust the size of the screen with the ASL interpreter by placing your cursor on the bar in between the 2 screens and dragging the bar side to side. Captioning is available by clicking on the CC button or live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All pre-recorded presentations include captions for accessibility. French-English interpretation is available. There will be a note in the program. Des interprètes français-anglais seront disponibles. French-English interpreters will be available. In Zoom, select the French language channel by clicking on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select French. You can then hear the meeting audio translated into French by a live interpreter. And now we test my French. Pour tous les discours d'ouverture et de nombreuses sessions parallèles, une interprétation français-anglais est disponible. Il y aura une note dans le programme. Des interprètes français-anglais seront disponibles. French-English interpreters will be available. Dans Zoom, sélectionnez le canal de langue française en cliquant sur l'icône interprétation au bas de votre écran, puis sélectionnez français. Vous pourrez alors étendre l'audio de la réunion traduit en français par un interprète en direct. We requested speakers to provide us with accessible materials if they wish to publish it on the website, such as including alternative text for images or providing them in Word or text format found in the session descriptions. If navigating the website is not accessible to you, you can send us an email to receive an alternative agenda in Word with links to join the conference sessions in Zoom. We also have technical support for attendees. There is a chat box for technical support available at the bottom right corner of the website for those having trouble accessing the virtual sessions. You can also visit the FAQ page on the conference website for answers to common questions, where you will also find our participant guide. Now, a little bit of guidance on how to watch the sessions. You must add the sessions that you want to watch to your agenda. Make sure you're logged in. Go to the conference agenda page and click on the title of each session you're interested in viewing. Add it to your agenda if it is not already there by clicking on the Register and Add to My Agenda button. You can then join or watch by clicking the Join Presentation button, which is in green. Conference sessions will be recorded and available on the conference website for 3 months after the conference. To ask a question during a live Q&A, please type your question in the Q&A box. This Q&A box in a Zoom webinar will be monitored and moderated during the question and answer sessions. You may also raise your hand in Zoom, and the panelist will then unmute you and you can ask your question. The keyboard shortcut for raising your hand is Alt-Y if you're a PC user, Option-Y if you use a Mac. This year, our virtual conference introduces networking sessions in the first 3 days of the conference, after the first set of sessions, but before the second from 2:05 to 2:25 p.m. Eastern Time, specifically designed as opportunities for delegates to share your ideas and thoughts. To participate in the networking sessions, you can raise your hand by clicking Raise Hand in the webinar controls or message in the chat box, and we will change your role from an attendee to a panelist. You can then turn on your video and unmute yourself. And you are also welcome to remain as an attendee to watch and listen to the networking sessions as well. I'll give you a brief overview of the goals of the conference. Our overall goal is to identify ways to help implement the Pan-Canadian Strategy for Disability and Work, which was developed in consultation with stakeholders and persons with disabilities. As 2021 continues to be a challenging year, with ongoing challenges for the employment of persons with disabilities. The DWC conference is focused on how to meet these challenges and continue to make progress on the implementation of the Pan-Canadian Strategy. The first day of the conference focuses on fully including persons with disabilities in the COVID-19 recovery. Tomorrow, we'll focus on one of the 2 pillars of the strategy, namely fostering disability confident and inclusive workplaces and making inclusive workplaces a reality. On day 3, Monday next week, we will focus on the second pillar, ensuring secure and comprehensive supports for persons with disabilities. And the final day of the conference next week, Thursday, will focus on moving forward together toward full inclusion in employment. I would also like to remind attendees at this point to join the keynote with the Honorable Carla Qualtrough after the Indigenous opening. It is my pleasure now to introduce our Indigenous opening session that is given by Laura Comwind, traditional knowledge keeper and practitioner. Laura is a member of Kitcher Nuham Mayuksib Ininewug, or KI. She is the proud mother of 5 children and grandmother to 8 grandchildren. Laura is fluent in her Indigenous language, Anishinaabemowin, and is a certified native language instructor. As an Indigenous knowledge keeper and practitioner, Laura has received knowledge and instruction from elders and knowledge keepers in a variety of traditional areas and is committed to pass the knowledge to interested peoples. Laura is a graduate of Lakehead University and is currently working on the design and delivery of training programs for Indigenous peoples that are rooted in Indigenous knowledge, land-based learning, and Western education and training methodologies. Welcome, Laura.
Kadeo benesi kwendigo makwando dem kitchenemek sabik na kendonji. Bonjour kakinauya. Greetings everyone. Kakinan de noe maganak all my relations and all living beings. Nui gagis mo kewe nogum. I am going to do the opening Thanksgiving address, the prayer. Nimikwa chendam. I am very grateful and thankful to speak on everyone's behalf, to do the prayer Umanogum today. So Kishemanito, Great Spirit, Creator of all things, Shawena Mishnah, we ask for your benevolence and love. We do Mishnah, we ask for your help and your continued guidance. Chikoyak chipum seag, that we walk in the right and righteous path today. And I'm also addressing the Kokum Snanak, Nimshom Snanak, all our grandmothers and all our grandfathers that are protectors and givers of life. We are truly grateful. Miigwechendaman, Wenobam Gami Naguag, for all the gifts of life that are given to us today. Kakinagegon that is bestowed upon us. Minobimatizun, the sacred life that we are given. The Goyakabum Seven, a path, a righteous path to follow. Minuatizun, to be kind and to be compassionate. Kijewadizun, to love unconditionally. Koyakwenemoen, to think always with a good mind. Minodib Seven, that we all have our needs met on a daily basis, that everyone's needs are met. Minonexwatadun, that we come together today in a good way. Minobigyaosun, that we raise our children and our grandchildren and those yet to be born to be good people. Miigwechendemwe Gapisitosyak, thank you for listening and for hearing our prayers. Asema Nibagidinigamen. We humbly offer our tobacco and to ask the spirit of the sacred medicine to carry our words to the spirit world. With one mind, we ask for the protection of our children and grandchildren and those yet to be born. And we ask for the continued safety and well-being of all our relations. We ask for the strength and the ability to be thankful and to supportive of each other and to be fair and just to all, no matter our physical, spiritual, and mental and emotional state. Chimigwech, thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, for bringing your words to the conference. It's very, very much appreciated. Miigwech.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure now to introduce you to our first keynote speaker of the day, Honorable Carla Qualtrough. Minister Qualtrough, if you want to put your camera on. There you are. Great. So it's my absolute honor to introduce you all to Minister Qualtrough. I'll read just a little bit of her bio, but not the whole thing. I know. Oh, I know. I know better than that. So Carla Qualtrough is the Minister of Parliament for Delta, British Columbia. And she has been minister since she was first elected in 2015, currently serving in the senior role of the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and Disability Inclusion. She is active on a number of cabinet committees and has been at the center of the federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic. She is responsible for many emergency measures, including the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the Canada Emergency Student Benefit, employment insurance, and of course, the one-time payment for persons with disabilities. As Canada works to recover from the effects of this pandemic, Minister Qualtrough is leading the charge on creating jobs, upskilling workers, and implementing a historic disability inclusion action plan. On another very important note, Minister Qualtrough is a champion in the work that we've undertaken here at the Disability and Work in Canada initiative. And we are so honored to have you here with us today as our keynote speaker to kick off our 5th annual DWC conference. Over to you, Minister.
Well, thanks, Maureen. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be joining you for this year's conference. I'm participating today from the unceded territory of the Algonquin people. And thanks so much to Laura for your greeting. And Maureen, thanks as always for your kind introduction. I want to welcome my esteemed colleague and friend, the MP for Don Valley West, Rob Oliphant, who's also with us and a fierce ally and advocate on disability inclusion. And thanks to Rob for being here today. I'm so happy to be here with you to talk about disability inclusive employment. It's a rich topic and something that, as many of you know, I'm particularly passionate about. It's hard to believe that almost 2 years has gone by in this pandemic. Since last year's conference, a lot has happened in disability inclusion policy. The pandemic reinforced the urgent need for us to address the barriers to inclusion that persons with disabilities face. It also created an opening for us to shape an inclusive economic recovery. From the beginning, our government took a disability inclusive approach, recognizing that the lives of persons with disabilities were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. We created a COVID-19 disability advisory group and delivered targeted supports like extra income relief for students with disabilities, and as Maureen referenced, the one-time payment for persons with disabilities. We also looked at creating we were also looking to create a permanent disability benefit, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. First, I want to talk about how the pandemic has opened up the conversation about accommodations at work. We have all had to adapt to working under different conditions, and this has helped mainstream issues around inclusive employment and how employers need to think more broadly about equity and what their employees need to be able to do their jobs effectively. Now we're capitalizing on what we have learned. Just as envisioned by the Accessible Canada Act, eliminating barriers to employment for persons with disabilities is one of the key priority areas, recognizing the need for a shift from a focus on accommodation to an approach that is barrier-free and inclusive by design. Workplaces and policies, programs, and services need to be designed with inclusivity in mind from the start so that people are included from the outset. This means ensuring that persons with disabilities are actively involved in the development and implementation of workplace initiatives, whether it be a shift to a remote work environment or the delivery of new job training. This will help even the playing field for everyone. And of course, you all know about this. I'm excited about the work of the next generation of disability policy researchers in Canada, such as Alexis Boukjian, who studies poverty, disability, and employment, and says that the current pandemic has shed light on the changing nature of work and presented opportunities for positive change. And I couldn't agree more. I'm also excited about the work of groups like the Valuable 500, who motivated 500 organizations to commit to putting disability inclusion on their business leadership agendas. Our government's new mandate is focused on preparing for life after COVID-19 in a way that is inclusive, accessible, and sustainable. This means reaffirming our commitment to disability inclusion and getting to work on Canada's first ever Disability Inclusion Action Plan, the DIAP. We know that in order to be successful in our work, it will require the full participation and leadership of persons with disabilities. This is why we recently completed an online public survey on the DIAP. We also had a series of roundtables during the summer with members of the disability community, experts and academics, and are supporting ongoing engagement activities. In fact, I'm pleased to announce today that Independent Living Canada, in partnership with Muscular Dystrophy Canada, have been selected as recipients of $650,000 under the Social Development Partnership Program Disability Stream to further consult with the community on the development of the DIAP over the next 16 months. Congratulations to both of these organizations. They'll work with disability stakeholders across the country to solicit community perspective and insights into the design and implementation of key initiatives under the DIAP. This engagement will feature perspectives on underrepresented and harder to reach populations, including Black persons with disabilities, racialized persons with disabilities, and persons with disabilities who identify as LGBTQ2+. We're building on our progress and putting the action plan together based on what we are hearing. But I can tell you that it will include a new Canada Disability Benefits to help lift hundreds of thousands of working age persons with disabilities out of poverty. It will include a plan to help persons with disabilities get jobs and help employers understand that having a disability doesn't mean that you can't do the job. The employment strategy is just one pillar of the plan. There are 3 others that are equally as important and help reinforce each other. Not only do they include the creation of the disability benefit, as I mentioned, but also making it easier for persons with disabilities to access public services and programs, and a push for more inclusive spaces in areas like community infrastructure and early learning and childcare. The employment strategy is a key piece going forward, and although we're starting to see the labor market stabilize, research is showing that persons with disabilities were often the first to lose their jobs at the start of the pandemic and are being the last, if at all, to be rehired. The Pan-Canadian Strategy on Disability and Work, as well as the views and input of those who contributed to it, are absolutely informing our ongoing development of the strategy. We need to make sure that persons with disabilities have the skills and supports to find jobs or set up businesses. But it's not just about creating jobs for persons with disabilities. It's about making sure that there's a pathway to success and equal opportunities to advance all the way to the positions of top leadership. Our employment strategy also has a focus on supporting employers. It's about leadership and mentorship among peers. It's about providing employers with the tools to help foster disability confidence and inclusive workplaces. On the ground, our government is already making changes. New investments in the Opportunities Fund for Persons with Disabilities programs allows us to work closely with organizations, some of whom are here today, to provide persons with disabilities better access to training, to jobs, and supports to start businesses. Part of this funding will go towards creating a stream focused on career advancements under the Opportunities Fund, which will help people who are already working move to better jobs and advance their careers. We also recognize that Indigenous people with disabilities face unique barriers in the labor market. For this reason, and as part of our ongoing commitment to reconciliation, we are investing new funds in programming for Indigenous persons with disabilities through the Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Program. As we continue to live with the pandemic and focus on an inclusive economic recovery, the government will keep doing its part to ensure that we put disability and inclusion and accessibility up front. We'll continue to implement the Accessible Canada Act, employment being one of the key areas of focus under the Act, and we'll support the ongoing identification, removal, and prevention of barriers to increase accessibility in communities, workplaces, and all aspects of society. Part of my leadership role is pushing for a more disability inclusive approach within government and Parliament. Our department, ESDC, aims to be a leader in inclusive design of employment strategies and policies benefiting people with disabilities and all our employees. Some examples include disability inclusion measures and student loan programs, summer job programs, and a disability inclusive approach to attending and participating in Parliament. During the last sitting, we adapted and were forced to find a virtual way to debate in the House of Commons, from tabling legislation to attending question period. As a result of much work moving to digital, I attended many committee and other meetings via phone rather than video so that I could use my text and larger software on my computer screen without having to toggle back and forth between my documents and the virtual meeting, which is, as you can all, many of you can relate, a cumbersome process. But the point is we were able to adapt and accommodate, and we were able to find ways to make it work. And we passed unprecedented amounts of legislation to help Canadians during this pandemic. And I think we left Parliament a little bit more disability inclusive along the way. You know, disability inclusion in the Government of Canada also means creating inclusive systems that support workers, like daycare, like public transit, like skills training. And it's exciting to see the change that has happened, even in my short time in government. You all know how my title has changed to represent this shift in thinking from Minister of Accessibility to Minister of Disability Inclusion. Now, before I conclude, I want to extend a challenge to all of you here today, and this is my call to action to you. I want you to think about how we capitalize on this moment coming out of this pandemic to bring disability inclusion into mainstream employment practices. How do we make it clear to employers that while this is a human rights issue, it's also really an economic issue that affects their bottom line? We know that persons with disabilities represent an untapped labor pool. Even before COVID-19, persons with disabilities were and continue to be vastly underemployed and unemployed. And as employment levels begin to stabilize, we're facing labor shortages across many regions in this country. We need to use this moment to remind employers that we have an incredibly talented, ambitious, capable, innovative, and creative talent pool ready to fill those job vacancies. Additionally, the economic impact of persons with disability is huge. One study in Canada, of course, you know this, found that the consumer market just for people with a physical disability amounted to, in 2017 to 14% of the total consumer market in Canada. And a shout out to some of the research being done by our host today, the Canadian Council on Rehab and Work, that further estimates that Canadians with disabilities have access to a combined disposable income of $25 billion annually. That's a lot of spending clout, and we need to remind people of this. We all know that the evidence is clear. If your business isn't disability inclusive, which includes ensuring that your online and physical spaces are accessible, you're not only missing out on being able to hire amazing people, but also on significant business and customers. And there's a multiplier effect there as well. Armed with these arguments, I think we can challenge employers' perceptions and make it clear that including more persons with disabilities in workplaces and as consumers is a win-win for everyone. And it's really something worth fighting for. This brings me to this year's theme for the International Day of Persons with Disabilities: leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. Leadership begins with each of us. Participation begins with each of us. And in the spirit of nothing without us, we need to ensure that leaders with disabilities and allies are at the table as we look toward the post-COVID era and an inclusive recovery. Thanks, Maureen, for having me. Thanks to you all for having me today. I wish you a wonderful conference, and let's chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Minister. Very inspirational words and promises as well. So really appreciate that. And I really appreciate your willingness to take some live Q&A at the conference today. We heard from our attendees last year that there was a real lack of involvement. It's hard on Zoom, right? It's hard to make sure that we've got people involved. So much, really do appreciate the fact that you're willing to take these questions. So our first question comes from the floor. First of all, it's a huge appreciation to Honorable Carla Qualtrough for her time here. And also a question that there is, this person is working in an accessibility company founded by a person with a disability, and all the employees, I'm assuming it means employees, are people with disabilities, but they were unable to get any financial help or grants because it's a startup. And so this person is saying that she's not too sure, she or he, I'm sorry, I shouldn't assume, not too sure that other companies are out there like they are, and if there's any advice that you would be able to give at this time.
Really good question, Maureen. Thank you for the question. It's something that we continue to work on as a government. So you're absolutely correct. One of the parameters of the business supports that we put in place during COVID was that the business had to be up and running when COVID hit. And that was primarily so we could compare what people had been earning or the revenue they'd been getting prior to COVID with what the impact COVID had been on their business and help them compensate for that discrepancy. As a result of not having comparator data, startups were not eligible for the wage subsidy or the business loans. And now that COVID has gone on for 2 years and people have bravely started businesses during a pandemic, we understand that these businesses are really struggling. So what I can tell you is that we're looking at it, that there are new COVID supports being debated in the House of Commons, for businesses that have been hardest hit. And we'll just have to look and see at how we can make sure that these businesses like yours, which is an awesome sounding business, by the way, and kudos to you for that innovation, don't continue to fall through the cracks. But thank you for bringing it up, because I love having real life examples to share with my colleagues in cabinet and in the House, and I'll definitely bring your concerns forward.
Thank you. You've always been a champion for that. So thank you so much. We have another question here. It's around student loan repayments. So in Canada, student loan repayments begin almost immediately after graduation, sometimes forcing graduates to make employment decisions based on what can best contribute to loan repayment. Student loan obligations reduce the ability of new graduates to start a family, work in public service careers, buy a house, car, and other assets, build career-related volunteer experience, or take lower paying work in their desired field to get a foot in the front door. You're nodding your head, you understand this question well. Will there be a push to assist recent graduates with securing gainful employment before the repayment of the student loans based on the ability to pay back the loans and a sustainable living? And then the second part to this question is, can those persons retaining or re-entering entering the workforce for the first time, could they be considered with respect to those with disabilities?
Again, great question and super well thought out, and thank you. Fortunately, the Canada Student Loan Program is within my portfolio, and we've done a lot of work actually over the past years trying to make it more equitable for students with disabilities. It was what motivated our top up of the student emergency student benefit during the summer, during COVID. And it's what actually has motivated a lot of the thinking we've done around when students should be obligated to start their loan repayment. So what we've committed to actually is not a timeline, but an income level. So you won't have to start repaying your student loans once the legislation that we're going to introduce is in place until you're earning $40,000 a year. Right now it's $25,000 a year, and we're working on moving it up to $40,000, but it's not a timeline thing, it's an income level thing. And of course, in the meantime, we want people to have opportunities to get the jobs that they want, but that are good paying and give you a dignified living wage. And so we're working really hard on the employment strategy I mentioned, but also on making sure that all of our employment programs across the government of Canada are disability inclusive. So for example, Canada Summer Jobs, which is a student program, we made sure, again, one of the programs I'm responsible for, that when we set the national priorities for this program, we made sure one of the priorities was hiring people with disabilities. So the neat thing about the Prime Minister giving me employment and disability inclusion is I don't have to talk to somebody else to make these things happen. I can literally, decide in my own kind of ministerial world that we need to make sure that Canada Student Loan Program, that our job creation programs, that our skills training and development programs are very inclusive and equitable and provide equal, if not heightened, opportunities for people who have been traditionally kept out of the workforce and out of the programs that governments have set up to help workers. So absolutely happy, Maureen, to get more information about Canada Student Loan Repayment to you guys. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the individual who asked the question, but happy to give him or her more details on Canada Student Loans and kind of the timing and criteria for loan repayment.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister. I think that if we could get that information, we're happy to post it on our website here as well. So anybody would be able to have access to that. So thank you so much. Another question is, I'm going to ask the question, but then I'm going to put a little bit of a caveat in it. The question is, how will Independent Living Canada, and it's actually muscular dystrophy, ensure a diverse disability groups and communities' voices will be included, and not just the large independent. And the caveat to this is just so that everybody knows that both Independent Living Canada, Muscular Dystrophy Canada, as well as Disability Without Poverty, will be doing a panel presentation next Monday in our third day of the conference. And so I would encourage the speaker to ask that question again, or the question to be asked again next week. So over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Maureen. You answered a little bit for me, but I will tell you that the expectation, in fact, is that these organizations, and it will be written into their contract, make sure that they reach out to groups that maybe historically haven't been included in these kinds of conversation, and marginalized populations, individuals. It feels like the big organizations have a voice at the table, and it's a very important perspective representing a lot of individuals across the country, but there is extreme value in having individuals also contribute in their own right, with their own perspective. So like Maureen, I encourage you to ask them that. And from my part, we'll make sure there's oversight in place to make sure that they do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The next question is, hello, Minister. You mentioned the disability benefit. What are the next steps planned with that?
Sorry, I was writing it down, but that's a really quick one. Oh my gosh, we could talk about this forever. So next step. So as you'll have seen, and as I've been very clear and said today, the immediate next step is to take time and reintroduce this legislation in the House of Commons. So I can assure you that is absolutely in the works. There's some procedural bills and the COVID benefit bills that are in front of the House right now that are incredibly urgent. We've got the speech from the throne. We're going to have what we call supply next week, which is just getting money to government organizations, government departments. But legislative calendars being what they are, I'm very keen to introduce reintroduce this bill as soon as possible. So that's the legislative side. Of course, the more difficult and challenging and important conversations are those we're going to be having with the provinces on what this means and how we can ensure that provincial benefits are not impacted negatively, that people are better off. You may have been watching our government over the past months negotiate childcare agreements with provinces. It's the same kind of process. We look at a provincial system, we determine how the eligibility for disability supports and services is done in that particular province. We then work to ensure by agreement that people are going to be better off, because that's the whole point of this. The whole point of this benefit is to lift people out of poverty and to give people an income level that provides them and affords them the dignity and opportunity that comes with that assurance. And we are not going to be replacing existing levels of income support. We do not want to put into jeopardy anybody's entitlement to the services that come with being on a provincial disability support. And, you know, I also think, and I've challenged my provincial colleagues and been pretty vocal about this, it isn't a very big secret that this is an opportunity for provinces with the federal government coming to the table with big money for the first time to really rethink how they deliver disability supports and services, and maybe decouple some of these requirements that basically keep people from being able to take jobs because my pharmacare is in jeopardy, or because my access to transit is in jeopardy, and really rethink how disability supports are provided and services in their province. And so I'm hoping I'm expecting, and I've told them I expect that that's the conversation that they need to have in their jurisdictions. And as I said on the table, that's the message I will keep bringing forth is, you know, people have to be better off. People have to be, you know, we have to pull people out of poverty. That's the whole point of this. And this is an opportunity for you to bring your own systems into a modern human rights-based understanding of disability. So super exciting, lots of work. And then I would say, you know, we've got the legislation stream, Maureen, the PT, the provincial territorial stream, and then we've got the community engagement stream, which is all the work that we're doing on the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, which of course one element is of the benefit. So we want people to keep contributing their ideas, working with community leaders on what this benefit should look like. A lot going on, and we are working as fast as we can and always open to ways to improve and keep moving forward on this.
Thank you so much for that. The questions keep coming in. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but you did mention transportation in your last answer, and we do have a question here about transportation. So transportation to and from work can be a huge employment barrier for people with disabilities who may not be financially or physically capable of handling their own transportation. Are there supports to assist disabled persons or transportation service providers to address transportation-related barriers to employment?
Again, great question. Sorry, I won't be able to answer all of them, Maureen, but this one, it really gets to the core of the barriers that we need to remove, because I would say one of the, if not the biggest barrier to full participation in employment is access to transit. So, and transportation more broadly. You know, provinces have different approaches. Not many of them are terribly effective or working well. One of the things I'm looking at with the Minister of Infrastructure is putting in a requirement in our transit investments that we invest only in accessible transit. That makes eminent sense to me. Why would we spend $1 on transit that isn't accessible? But we need to dig deeper. And again, it's this conversation with the provinces. You know, a really interesting model exists in the UK where they got out of the business of Handy-Dart, of a separate transportation system, and they give out taxi checks. Someone can, at their leisure and on their own time, take a taxi to work, and that is covered by the government as a service, as a benefit. And it was more cost effective because they completely got rid of this massive clunky system that wasn't working. It's more dignified because you have the choice of where and when you go and how you get there. And it allowed people to work and get to work safely and on their own terms. So those are the kind of conversations that I want to have with the provinces, because so much of the disability support world as provincial jurisdiction. And as much as I want to do all these things, we have to do it in partnership. And there are willing partners in provincial governments in this country, and there are ones who are a little more reluctant, I would say. So we need to do a lot of work, and that's the work you all can do is work at the provincial level to lobby your own provincial governments and tell them about the opportunity that exists right now to make some big change when it comes to people with disabilities.
Thank you. That's excellent. I've got one more question for you. I know you have a hard stop in just 4 minutes, so we're going to sap up all the time that we can from you. This person has said that they've spoken with a federal government employee who is off work due to a degenerative eye disease. As they prepared to work, the federal government employer sent them documentation encouraging them to leave work and go on disability support rather than to return to work. They delayed bringing in a magnifying glass and putting in blinds to help improve their vision. And the changes were only made in provisions for the employee to return to work after CNIB got involved. How can we work with you to ensure the federal government employers are not preventing people with disabilities from returning to work?
Well, first of all, I'm very sorry that happened, and it shouldn't have. We should be welcoming people back. Of course, if you can't come back, we want to be supporting you in that as well. But jeepers, if people are ready and able to come back, we need to do whatever we can to make sure we're not in the way of that. We have a dedicated deputy minister responsible for the public service and accessibility within the public service. And I'm grateful that CNIB was able to help, but it shouldn't be on CNIB to make this happen. And I think that, I'm going to dig in a little bit on this example, but what you all can do is keep bringing these examples to our attention, to my attention, to CCRWs, and they can bring it to my attention. But good Lord, we've committed to hiring 5,000 people with disabilities within the federal public service in the next 5 years. And we're doing that. That hiring process is underway, but we certainly better be getting our treatment of our existing employers right and dignified along the way. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you so much, Minister Qualtrough. And with that, I know there are many, many, many more questions that have come in. I know that your office is always open to answering individual questions. And so I would encourage those who have not had their question answered here to contact your office directly and to engage you in that way. And with that, before we go to our vignette, we have a vignette that is lined up for everybody that will be watching. We'll be watching a vignette, and then we'll be having a short break before we go into our parallel sessions. But I just want to thank you so much again for all of your hard work, your dedication, and your championship. You mentioned it in your presentation to us, that you really do work with your colleagues to make sure that your colleagues understand what's going on as far as disability and employment is concerned. And we know that. And so you know that you have us as well to support the work that you're doing, because you can't do it alone, just like we can't do it alone. So we thank you so much for your time, for your dedication, for your championship. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Maureen. Again, great questions, and I'm here to help. And like you all, I wish we could do things a lot quicker, but I can assure you we are working hard and we are moving things along at a pace that government has never seen before, and I have no intention of slowing down. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your conference, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.